I'm sitting here with Kimberly Bryant, the founder of Black Girls Code, which is an organization to teach young women of color how to code. So can you tell me a bit about what your approach at Black Girls Code is to tackling diversity?
So for Black Girls Code, our mission is really focused on changing what we call the face of technology. And that's by introducing girls from underrepresented communities, Black and Brown communities, to coding. We do this in this model that includes workshops and hackathons and summer camps that bring girls ages 7 to 17 together in a cohort of their peers to learn from everything from mobile app design to game development to robotics, etc.
And what are some of the proudest accomplishments of Black Girls Code?
For me personally, the proudest accomplishment that I have is really seeing girls that have been introduced to coding and introduced to technology through our programs go on to achieve things outside of the program that are even greater. So really seeing them use Black Girls Code as a platform to create opportunities that they didn't even know existed before.
And why is diversity important, or why should diversity be something that tech companies prioritize?
Well, there have been multiple studies that show that diverse teams are more successful, they build better products, and I think when we look at really the changing demographics in the country and even across the world, we see that the demographics are steadily changing to be more women, more than 50% women as far as population goes, and definitely more Black and Brown. And when we look at tech companies, they really, at this point in time, don't reflect the demographics of the U.S. or the world in general and the people that are using those products. So it would be important to them to continue to be successful as companies and really meet the needs of their consumers to bring more people inside of the company instead of just focusing on utilizing them as consumers.
And can you give me an example of a company, in your opinion, that is tackling diversity and inclusion well? Are there any who are doing it well, would you say?
One company in particular that I really admire the work and how open and definitely setting goals that they've been really intentional about that has been Intel. And really seeing that movement from the top down and that commitment from the top down start to filter through their organization, I believe is going to reap some benefits for them in the years to come.
And what about any of I know you kind of hear of like the big five tech companies, so like I guess it's what, Apple, Google, Facebook.
So I think in terms of their intentionality around really embracing diversity, that seems to be there for most of those companies, but I haven't yet seen them really be able to achieve results.
Do you think that racism or sexism plays a part in all of that? Do you think that racism and sexism is within the tech industry?
Absolutely. I think that we're fighting several things, two things here. We're fighting really systemic racism that's been built into the fabric of not just these companies, but our nation in general. But I think even more predominant is this issue of implicit bias that is really one of the leading factors, I think, in prohibiting the tech industry becoming more diverse.
Some companies have started implementing what they call unconscious bias training workshops, but some people are saying like, no, it's not unconscious, it's actually conscious. Do you think that will be helpful?
I think it will absolutely be helpful. I feel that it's both conscious and unconscious. So I don't think that it's something that we should be ashamed of admitting that we have these unconscious biases. But I think the trainings will help us to kind of address how do we overcome them in the decisions that we make every day and the perceptions that we have of our coworkers, our peers, etc., and allow us to be better at being able to focus on driving diversity in the companies.
Ultimately, what do you think needs to happen within the tech industry in order for diverse people to be included and feel welcome?
As an engineer of color, I'm not going to go work for a company or feel comfortable at a company, working at a company that the board doesn't reflect me and my point of views, or my senior leadership is not reflective of the people that are working in lower levels in the company. And until that starts to happen and be very specifically driven from the top down by all these companies, I don't think we're going to see any change, any real change at least.
Just recently in the last couple of months, or even I guess the last year or so, tech companies have been bringing on board heads of diversity. Some are Black women, some are white men. People have seemed to have differing reactions to that. In your opinion, is there an ideal head of diversity? Is there, like, can a head of diversity be a white man?
So for me, and this is definitely Kimberly's perspective and not necessarily that of Black Girls Code,
Okay.
But I really feel like the person that leads a diversity initiative doesn't necessarily have to look like me. It doesn't have to be a Black woman. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Black man or Black or brown person in that role. What I'm looking is for someone who could actually deliver and drive results. So, and also understand and have a connection to this issue, this problem of diversity in the way that they are going to approach their jobs.
And at Black Girls Code, are you the head of diversity? Do you have a head of diversity, or what does that look like?
So at Black Girls Code, we're still pretty tiny. So I'm the head of diversity and many other things as well on a day-to-day basis. So it could change. But for me, even as a very small organization, diversity is extremely important to me. So when I am looking at diversity in my company, that means that I don't necessarily want a team that's all Black women, although that's what we serve. I want diversity at our table because I understand that just our perspective and looking at this singular lens doesn't always answer all of the questions that we need to as a team. So I'm looking for men on my team. I'm looking for people from different backgrounds and ethnicities on my team. I'm looking for people of different ages and different genders on my team. That's extremely important to me. And so I really do push our HR manager to look for diversity in the candidates as we're opening up our team to new candidates as well.
And last thing, are certain types of diversity, in your opinion, prioritized over others?
Absolutely. When companies focus on diversity, it's often easier to focus on gender and perhaps just focus on programs that are elevating women that are Caucasian women to positions of leadership and not really looking at how they're doing in other areas of diversity. I think we've seen that start to percolate a lot in the tech industry, and even some CEOs focus on or answer that question of why that is easier. I don't agree with that because I don't think that the trickle-down theory of diversity ever really works. So for me, if a company is really committed to diversity, that means everything. That means gender diversity, that means sexual orientation for me, that means race, ethnicity. Everything should be have a plan and focus at the same time, not one above the other. I mean, how do you prioritize that? I'm a woman, but I'm a woman of color. So for me, a company saying we're only going to focus on raising women in these positions is problematic because I also come to the table as a woman that's African American.